Welcome to a journey that may transform the way you see yourself and your life. Throughout this journey, you will discover how fear influences your decisions, how to regain control over your thoughts, and how to awaken the strength that has always existed within you. Here you will find inspiration drawn from the work of remarkable individuals who have helped people develop awareness, courage, and inner power. Particularly influential are the ideas and experiences of Carl Gustav Jung, Viktor E. Frankl, Joseph Murphy, Sadhguru, Neville Goddard, and Eckhart Tolle. Their insights and discoveries form one of the foundations of this book, though they are presented through an original perspective and combined with a practical approach to everyday life. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and allow yourself to begin the journey from fear to power. There are people who wake up in the morning and before they even open their eyes, they feel a weight. They cannot name it. It is not a specific problem. It is not even a clear thought. It feels more like a shadow resting somewhere deep inside the chest. A shadow that whispers, "Be careful. Don't take risks. Don't stand out. Don't try." Over the years, many of us learned to treat that voice as our own, as if it were part of our personality, as if it were telling the truth. But the truth is something entirely different. Fear is not you. Fear is a guest. The problem is that most people have handed it the keys to the house. Imagine a person getting into the car of their life. They have goals, dreams, desires. They want to love, to create, to earn more, to travel, to speak with their own voice. But when they sit down in the passenger seat, they notice something strange. Fear is sitting behind the wheel, and it has been driving for a very long time. Fear chooses the road. Fear hits the brakes. Fear decides where it is safe to go and where it is not. For a while this seems reasonable, because fear can be very convincing. It says, "I'm doing this for your safety. I'm protecting you. I'm taking care of you." And in a way, it is telling the truth. Once upon a time, fear was necessary. Without fear, our ancestors would not have survived. Fear warned them about danger, helped them run, helped them fight, helped them stay alive. But modern humans rarely run from predators. More often, they run from judgment, from rejection, from failure, from their own potential. And this is where one of the greatest paradoxes of life begins. Very often, we are more afraid of our greatness than of our limitations, because limitations are familiar, they are predictable, they offer the illusion of safety. A woman once dreamed for years of starting her own business. She had the knowledge, the experience, the idea. Her friends could not understand why she kept postponing the decision. She did not understand it either. She kept saying she needed one more course, one more book, a few more months to prepare. Years passed. One day she asked herself a question. What if the problem isn't that I'm not ready? The question stopped her like a sudden light on an empty road. For the first time, she saw something she had never noticed before. She was not afraid of failure. She was afraid of success. She was afraid that her life would actually change. She was afraid of responsibility. Afraid of becoming a new version of herself. Afraid of losing her old identity. This is exactly how fear works. It rarely shows its true face. It wears masks. It disguises itself as reason, as perfectionism, analysis, as the need for control, patience, preparation. It can live inside a person for decades without ever revealing its name. That is why so many people do not realize they are being guided by it. They think they are making conscious decisions, when in reality, they are often reacting to hidden fears. If you look honestly at your own life, you may notice something similar. Perhaps there are conversations you never had, dreams you never pursued, boundaries you never set, love you never expressed, decisions you keep postponing. Every time a person abandons their truth to avoid discomfort, fear gains a little more power. It does not happen all at once. It is a process, drop by drop, day by day, year by year. Until one morning you wake up and realize your life looks nothing like the life you imagined. Not because you lack talent, not because opportunities never appeared, but because you allowed fear to become the architect of your reality. There is good news, however. Every story can be rewritten, even this one. Perhaps you are wondering why some people seem fearless. The truth is that they are not. There are no people without fear. There are only people who have learned not to surrender their power to it, and that is a massive difference. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite fear. When you look at someone who changes their life, starts a business, leaves a toxic relationship, moves to a new city, or pursues a great dream, you may think they possess something special, something you do not have. Most of the time, the difference is much simpler. They are afraid too. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions. Deep inside, every human being knows this moment. The moment when one inner voice says, "This matters," and another immediately replies, "But what if it doesn't work?" That is where the future is decided, not when everything feels easy, not when certainty arrives, when circumstances are perfect. The future changes in moments of uncertainty, in moments of trembling, in moments when the heart says go and fear says stay. For many years, people believed that strength meant control, that power meant dominance, that influence meant having authority over the world. But the greatest power has nothing to do with controlling others. True power begins when you regain influence over yourself, over your thoughts, your reactions, your decisions, over the direction of your life. And this is where our journey begins, not with success, manifestation, not with grand ambitions. It begins by looking directly into the eyes of what has been hiding in the shadows for years. Because before a person can discover their strength, they must understand the source of their fear. Before they can take back the wheel, they must see who has been driving. And once they see it, they can never pretend nothing happened. Because if fear is not who you are, then who are you beneath all the layers of fear, masks, and defense mechanisms? That question will become the doorway to the next stage of the journey. When a child comes into the world, they do not wonder whether they are good enough. They do not analyze whether they deserve love. They do not compare themselves to others. They do not wake up in the morning feeling they must prove their worth. They simply are. They cry when they are sad. They laugh when they feel joy. They express themselves without calculation. They do not yet know masks. They do not yet know the fear of judgment. They do not yet know the weight of expectations. Then, however, a process begins that almost every human being experiences. Slowly, often unnoticed, they learn which parts of themselves are accepted by the world and which are not. They hear that they should not be so loud, that they should not be so sensitive, that they should not be angry, that they should not cry, that they should try harder, earn more approval, fit in more. Over time, something extremely important happens. A person begins creating a version of themselves designed to gain acceptance. Unconsciously, they build a character. They put on layer after layer of protection. They learn to play roles: the good son, the perfect daughter, the reliable employee, the strong man, the always smiling woman, the successful person, the person with no problems, the person who controls everything. The problem is that every mask has a price. The longer you wear it, the farther you move away from yourself. Imagine an actor who spends their entire life playing one role. They wake up as that character. They fall asleep as that character. They speak as that character. They think as that character. After many years, they begin to forget who they were before stepping onto the stage. This is exactly what happens to many people. They do not suffer because they are weak. They suffer because they live too far away from their truth. Deep inside, they know something is wrong. They feel a fatigue they cannot explain. They feel emptiness despite achievement. They feel anxiety despite apparent security. They feel loneliness even in the company of others. This is not an accident. The soul always remembers who it truly is, even when the mind has forgotten. That is why certain situations shake us so deeply. Losing a job, the end of a relationship, a health crisis, the sudden collapse of plans. At first glance, they appear to be disasters, yet very often they are the beginning of awakening. Life has a strange way of returning us to authenticity. Sometimes it knocks gently on the door, other times it breaks it down with tremendous force. A man spent 20 years building a career that others admired. Promotions, money, prestige. Everything appeared perfect, yet every morning he felt heavier, emptier, more exhausted. He could not understand why. After all, he had achieved everything he wanted. Only years later did he discover a painful truth. They were never his dreams. They were dreams inherited from other people. He had been living a life designed to impress the world, but starving his soul. Such a moment can be terrifying. Because when old illusions begin to crack, a question emerges. If I am not everything I believed myself to be, then who am I? That question can awaken fear. But it is a special kind of fear. It is no longer the guardian of limitation. It becomes the guardian of transformation. Every deep transformation begins with the collapse of an old identity. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly by adding new parts to itself. First, its old form must dissolve. It must pass through a stage of chaos, a stage of not knowing, a stage where the old no longer works and the new has not yet been born. This is the stage people fear most. We want clarity before making a decision. We want guarantees before taking a step. We want certainty before embracing change. Life works differently. Clarity often arrives only after the first step has been taken, not before. A person discovering themselves is like a traveler walking through thick fog. They cannot see the entire road. They can only see a few feet ahead. Yet that is enough to take the next step. Then another. Then another. Most people are not stuck because they lack answers. They are stuck because they are afraid to trust what they already know. Somewhere deep inside there is often a quiet voice. It does not shout. It does not dominate. It does not fight for attention. It simply exists. It appears in moments of silence, in moments of honesty, in brief flashes of truth. It says, "This is not your path," or "It is time," or "Stop hiding." The problem is that the world is loud, so loud that many people stop hearing themselves. We live surrounded by opinions, expectations, and endless comparisons. Everyone seems to have an idea of how you should live, how you should look, how you should earn money, how you should love, how you should think. In all that noise, it becomes easy to lose yourself. Yet true power is not born from fitting in. It is born from authenticity. A person becomes truly strong only when they stop negotiating with their own truth. This does not mean selfishness. It does not mean ignoring others. It means having the courage to live in alignment with who you truly are. It is astonishing how much energy returns when we stop pretending. How much peace appears when we stop fighting ourselves. How much freedom emerges when we stop asking permission to be who we are. Because the greatest prison is not circumstance. The greatest prison is living in constant denial of your own nature. And the greatest liberation is the journey back to yourself. That return does not happen in a single day. It is a process, slow, sometimes painful, sometimes beautiful, sometimes both at once. Step by step you begin to notice which beliefs truly belong to you and which were inherited, which desires are authentic and which are rooted in the need for approval, which fears are real and which are only shadows of old experiences. Then something extraordinary happens. You begin to meet the person you have been hiding from the world, sometimes even from yourself. That meeting can be deeply emotional, because you discover that beneath all the layers of fear, there was never anything broken. There was never anything inadequate. There was never anything that needed fixing. There were only parts of you waiting for light, waiting for acceptance, waiting to come home. But if your identity has been built for so many years upon beliefs that were not truly yours, where did those inner programs come from? And why do they still hold so much power over your life? We are not born believing that we are not enough. We are not born feeling that the world is against us. We are not born fearing failure, rejection, or judgment. When we come into this world, our minds resemble fertile soil, open, receptive, ready to absorb every seed planted within it. The problem is that we do not choose the first gardeners. Other people plant their words, their fears, their experiences, and their limitations inside us. Often they do it out of love, sometimes out of concern. Most of the time without realizing it. A child hears that money causes problems, that life is hard, that people should know their place, that standing out is dangerous, that dreams are beautiful, but reality is different. Every one of these statements is like a small seed. One seed does not seem dangerous. 10 seeds do not seem dangerous either. But over the years they grow into an entire forest of beliefs. A forest so dense that we can no longer see the horizon. We begin to view the world not as it is, but as we have learned to perceive it. This is one of the most remarkable characteristics of the human mind. It does not react to reality itself. It reacts to its interpretation of reality. Two people can find themselves in exactly the same situation. One sees a threat. The other sees an opportunity. One views failure as proof of personal inadequacy. The other sees it as a lesson. One person closes their heart after heartbreak. Another learns to love more deeply. Events do not determine the quality of life. The meanings we assign to those events do. Imagine a person walking through life wearing dark glasses. Since childhood, they have heard that they are not good enough, that they must earn love, that others matter more, that success belongs to someone else. After many years, they no longer see the glasses. They only see the world. They are convinced reality truly looks this way. They do not realize they are looking through a filter. Most people do not suffer because of reality. They suffer because of the filters through which they view reality. Beliefs are incredibly deceptive because they operate in secret. They do not announce themselves by saying, "I am a belief." Instead, they say, "This is the truth." That is why they are so powerful. A person can spend an entire lifetime believing they do not deserve happiness. They may never say those exact words aloud, yet they will make decisions as though the belief were true. They will sabotage opportunities. They will choose relationships that confirm their low self-worth. They will abandon possibilities. They will stop one step before fulfillment, not because they lack ability, but because their inner program refuses to believe more is possible. The mind is extraordinarily loyal to whatever it considers true, even when that truth creates suffering. That is why change does not begin with changing circumstances. It begins with changing beliefs. A woman struggled with financial problems for many years. She worked hard. She was intelligent. She had good ideas. Yet she always ended up in the same place. When she began examining her beliefs, she discovered something surprising. Deep inside, she carried a sentence she had heard in childhood. "Rich people are greedy." She never consciously agreed with it. Yet her subconscious mind had accepted it as fact. Every time she approached greater success, an invisible brake would engage. Because if wealth meant becoming a bad person, then achieving wealth became a threat to her identity. This is how many limitations operate. Some concern money, others concern love. Still others involve health, success, spirituality, or self-worth. They are invisible walls inside the mind. A person collides with them repeatedly and eventually assumes the world itself is limiting them. In reality, they are often limited by their own map of reality. This does not mean all problems exist only in the mind. Life can be difficult. Life can be unfair. Life can hurt. Yet even in the most difficult circumstances, the way a person thinks influences whether they become a victim of their story or the author of it. Throughout history, we have seen people endure unimaginable hardship while maintaining inner freedom, not because they were stronger than everyone else, because they discovered something fundamental. Between an event and a reaction, there is a space. Inside that space lies a choice, and inside that choice lies power. Most people, however, live automatically. A stimulus appears, and an old program instantly takes control. Someone criticizes them, and they immediately feel worthless. Someone rejects them, and they instantly conclude they are a failure. A challenge appears, and they assume they cannot handle it. They do not realize they are not reacting to reality. They are reacting to their beliefs. Awakening begins when a person becomes aware of this distinction, when they realize for the first time that they are not their programming. They are not their thoughts. They are not the story they have been telling themselves for years. They are something much greater, an observer, a conscious presence, a being capable of choosing new meanings. Imagine for a moment that every thought you have about yourself is merely a hypothesis, not a fact, not a verdict, not an absolute truth, merely an interpretation. What then? What if the belief "I am not enough" was never true? What if "I can't do it" is only an old echo? What if "it's too late" is simply a story repeated by a tired mind? Such a perspective can open doors that once seemed permanently locked. Suddenly there is space. Suddenly there is breath. Suddenly there is possibility. Yet another challenge appears. Even when you recognize limiting beliefs, they do not disappear overnight. They were built over years, reinforced through repetition, strengthened by emotions and experiences. They are like trails worn deep into a forest. The mind automatically follows familiar paths. That is why transformation requires more than understanding. It requires practice. It requires patience. It requires consciously creating new pathways. Every new decision is a step beyond the familiar trail. At first it feels unnatural, uncomfortable, sometimes even false. Yet over time the new path becomes clearer while the old one begins to fade. This is how freedom is born. Not through one grand revolution, but through thousands of small choices, through daily acts of reclaiming awareness, through the courage to question everything that once seemed unquestionable. Yet even when you begin to recognize your beliefs, you discover something deeper beneath them. You find the source of their energy, the force that keeps them alive, the reason they return again and again, despite your best intentions. That source is emotion, especially the emotions you have spent years avoiding. And that raises a profound question. Is it possible that we are not being controlled by fear, sadness, and pain themselves, but by our endless attempts to escape them? There is a truth that most people do not want to hear. It is uncomfortable. It shatters illusions. It removes excuses. Yet at the same time, it opens the door to extraordinary freedom. That truth is simple. What you run from does not disappear. What you resist persists. What you refuse to feel will continue searching for a way to be seen. From an early age, human beings learn to avoid pain. This is natural. When you touch something hot, you pull your hand away. When you fall, you try not to repeat the same mistake. The problem begins when we apply the same principle to emotions. At some point, many of us conclude that certain feelings should also be avoided. Sadness should not be felt. Fear should not be felt. Shame should not be felt. Anger should not be felt. Helplessness should not be felt. Instead of experiencing emotions, we suppress them. We push them deep inside and hope they disappear. But emotions do not work that way. They are more like messages than threats. Every emotion carries information. Every emotion is trying to communicate something. Every emotion reveals something about our inner world. If we refuse to listen, however, it does not leave. It simply grows louder. Imagine a person standing in the ocean holding a large inflatable ball beneath the water. For a while they can keep it down, but they must use more and more strength. The harder they push, the more tension they feel. Then, the moment their grip weakens, the ball bursts back to the surface with tremendous force. That is how emotional suppression works. It is not freedom, it is a constant struggle. Many people spend years living this way. They appear calm, they smile, they work, they talk, they fulfill responsibilities. Yet beneath the surface a silent battle continues. Uncried tears, unexpressed anger, unprocessed fear, unhealed rejection. All of it remains inside and influences life more than most people are willing to admit. Sometimes it appears as chronic exhaustion, sometimes as anxiety, sometimes as tension in the body, sometimes as relationship problems, sometimes as a deep emptiness that cannot be filled with another achievement, another purchase, or another success. Human beings have countless ways of distracting themselves from what they feel. Endless work, entertainment, social media, food, shopping, constant analysis, perfectionism, control. Yet, regardless of the form, the mechanism remains the same. Instead of feeling, we escape. The paradox is that the very act of escaping gives emotions their power. It is like running from your own shadow. The faster you run, the faster it follows. A woman spent her entire life avoiding sadness. From childhood, she had been taught to be strong, to never fall apart, to always manage. Whenever difficult emotions appeared, she immediately distracted herself. She filled her calendar, organized her life, helped others. For years she believed everything was fine. Then one day she reached complete exhaustion. She no longer had the energy to maintain the image of someone who always had everything under control. For the first time, she sat in silence and allowed herself to feel what she had avoided for years. She cried for hours. Not because something new had happened, because she finally created space for everything that had been locked away. Later, she said something remarkable. She realized she had spent her life fearing sadness far more than sadness itself. That sentence contains profound wisdom. Often we do not suffer because of emotions. We suffer because of our resistance to emotions. Fear of fear is often greater than fear itself. Fear of pain is often more painful than pain itself. Fear of rejection can weigh more heavily than rejection itself. Once we begin to understand this, an entirely new path opens before us. A path that is not about eliminating emotions. It is about learning how to experience them. There is a tremendous difference. Modern culture often sells the illusion of constant happiness. Everywhere we hear that we should stay positive, motivated, and energetic. Yet life is not a straight line. Life is a wave. It has its tides and its currents, its bright days and dark nights, its moments of joy and moments of uncertainty. Emotional maturity does not mean feeling good all the time. It means being able to remain present with whatever arises. A truly free person is not someone who never feels fear. It is someone who no longer needs to run from fear. It is not someone who never experiences pain. It is someone who can make room for pain without being destroyed by it. This is where immense strength is born, because the moment you stop fighting your inner experience, you recover the energy you once spent resisting it. Imagine a river. If you try to stop its flow, you must use enormous effort. But if you learn to move with the current, you discover that the water itself carries you forward. Emotions work in a similar way. You do not need to stop them. You do not need to fix them. You do not need to analyze them endlessly. Often it is enough simply to feel them, fully, consciously, without judgment. In those moments, something surprising happens. The emotion you feared begins to dissolve, not because you defeated it, because you stopped fighting it. Many people spend their entire lives trying to control what they feel. Real transformation begins when we learn acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It does not mean passivity. It means acknowledging reality exactly as it is in this moment. Only then does genuine change become possible. A person cannot heal what they deny. They cannot release what they refuse to see. They cannot move beyond what they spend their life avoiding. That is why every journey toward power first leads through an encounter with the shadow, through everything that has been rejected, hidden and pushed into darkness. This is where many of our deepest wounds live. Yet it is also where many of our greatest gifts are waiting. Beneath every fear lies a hidden strength. Beneath every pain lies a lesson. Beneath every shadow waits a forgotten part of ourselves longing to be welcomed home. And this is where one of the most profound journeys a human being can undertake truly begins. A journey into the shadow, into the places within the psyche we avoid looking at, into the hidden aspects of ourselves that have remained locked behind the doors of awareness. But what happens when those doors finally open and you discover not only your wounds, but the true source of your power? Every human being carries two versions of themselves, the one they show the world and the one they hide. The first version is carefully constructed. It is shaped by expectations, experiences, social roles, and the desire to belong. The second version lives in the shadows. It contains everything that has been rejected, denied, judged, or forgotten. Most people spend years trying to strengthen the first version while avoiding the second. They polish the mask. They improve the image. They work on appearance, achievements, status, and recognition. Yet no matter how much they accomplish, something still feels incomplete. Something remains unresolved. This is because the parts of ourselves we reject never truly disappear. They simply move into the shadows. Imagine a large house with many rooms. Some rooms are bright and welcoming. Others remain locked for years. Dust gathers there. Forgotten memories wait in silence. Old emotions remain untouched. The longer the doors stay closed, the more mysterious those rooms become. Eventually, we begin to fear what might be inside. The human psyche works in much the same way. Everything we refuse to acknowledge becomes part of the shadow. The shadow is not evil, it is not a flaw, it is not a mistake, it is simply everything we have not yet accepted within ourselves. A child learns very quickly which parts of their personality receive approval and which parts do not. If they are told that anger is bad, they hide their anger. If sensitivity is mocked, they hide their sensitivity. If confidence is criticized, they hide their confidence. Over time, these rejected qualities do not vanish. They become unconscious. They continue influencing behavior from behind the scenes. This is why people are often surprised by their own reactions. A small comment triggers enormous anger. A minor setback creates overwhelming anxiety. A simple rejection awakens deep emotional pain. The reaction seems disproportionate because it is not connected only to the present moment. It is connected to everything that has been stored in the shadow. The remarkable thing about the shadow is that it contains far more than pain. It also contains potential. Many people assume their greatest treasures are found in the qualities they already express. In reality, some of their greatest gifts remain hidden in the parts they have suppressed. A man spent his entire life trying to be agreeable. He avoided conflict at all costs. He wanted everyone to like him. He believed kindness meant never upsetting anyone. On the surface, he seemed peaceful. Beneath the surface, however, he felt powerless. Eventually, he realized that what he had buried was not anger itself, but healthy strength. He had mistaken assertiveness for aggression. By rejecting one, he unconsciously rejected the other. The moment he began accepting his ability to set boundaries, his entire life changed. He did not become harsh, he became whole. This is one of the great secrets of transformation. The qualities we fear most often hide the gifts we need most. Beneath suppressed anger may lie courage. Beneath sadness may lie compassion. Beneath fear may lie wisdom. Beneath vulnerability may lie deep connection. The shadow does not merely contain wounds. It contains lost pieces of power. Yet facing the shadow requires honesty, radical honesty. It requires the willingness to see what we would rather avoid. Many people say they want freedom, but what they truly want is comfort. Freedom demands truth. Comfort often demands illusion. The journey into the shadow asks difficult questions. What parts of yourself do you judge most harshly? What qualities in others trigger strong emotional reactions? What patterns keep repeating in your life? What are you constantly trying to prove? These questions matter because what irritates us in others often reveals something hidden within ourselves. Sometimes we reject qualities we secretly possess. Other times we reject qualities we desperately need to develop. Either way, the shadow leaves clues everywhere. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for so many years that you forget it is there. You adjust your posture, you compensate for the weight, you organize your life around the burden. One day, someone removes the backpack. Suddenly you feel lighter, freer, stronger. Not because something new was added, because something unnecessary was released. This is what happens when we begin integrating the shadow. We stop wasting energy suppressing parts of ourselves. That energy becomes available again. Creativity returns. Vitality returns. Authenticity returns. Life begins to flow differently. Many people fear what they will find within themselves. They worry that if they look too deeply, they will discover something broken. Yet the opposite is usually true. The deeper we look, the more we discover that our wounds developed for understandable reasons. Our defenses once protected us. Our fears once served a purpose. Our masks once helped us survive. Understanding this creates compassion, not only for ourselves but for others as well. We begin to see that everyone is carrying unseen burdens. Everyone is fighting hidden battles. Everyone is navigating wounds that may never be visible on the surface. This realization softens judgment. It opens the heart. It creates space for healing. True healing is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself. It is about reclaiming every lost fragment of your being, every rejected emotion, every forgotten dream, every hidden strength, every abandoned truth. As these pieces return, a new sense of wholeness emerges. You no longer need to spend your life pretending. You no longer need to divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. You become integrated, and integration creates power, Not the power of domination, not the power of control, the power of authenticity, the power of inner alignment, the power of standing in your truth without apology. Yet once a person begins reclaiming the lost pieces of themselves, another profound discovery appears. They realize that the mind itself is not who they are. Thoughts continue to come and go. Emotions continue to rise and fall. Stories continue to appear. But something deeper remains unchanged beneath all of it. And discovering that deeper presence may be the most important turning point of the entire journey. Most people believe they consciously direct their own lives. They assume that the decisions they make every day stem from logical thinking, rational analysis, and free will. But when we take a closer look, we discover something surprising. A large part of our lives is not driven by conscious choices. It is driven by programs embedded deep beneath the surface of awareness, programs we often do not even notice. Imagine a massive ship sailing across the ocean. On the deck stands the captain. This is your conscious mind. It makes decisions, it sets the course, it watches the horizon. Yet beneath the deck, powerful engines are at work. They are what actually move the ship. If their operation conflicts with the captain's decisions, the ship will not go where he intends. Those engines are your subconscious mind. The subconscious stores beliefs, memories, emotional patterns, automatic reactions, and your self-image. It operates when you are not actively thinking. It influences how you interpret the world. It determines what you consider possible and what you dismiss as unrealistic. When someone says, "I don't know why I keep ending up with the same type of partner," they are often describing the work of the subconscious. When someone repeats, "I always ruin things right before success," they may also be speaking about its influence. When a person dreams of change but cannot sustain it, the subconscious almost always plays a crucial role. The subconscious acts like an extraordinarily loyal servant. It doesn't analyze whether the information stored within it is true. It does not judge it. It does not argue with it. It simply executes the program. If for years you were told that you were not good enough, the subconscious begins to treat that message as fact. If you came to believe that the world is dangerous, it will constantly search for threats. If you adopted the belief that love is tied to suffering, it will guide you toward situations that confirm that story. This may seem unfair, yet there is a certain logic to it. The subconscious has one primary goal. That goal is not happiness, it is not growth, it is not fulfillment. Its purpose is survival through maintaining what is familiar. To the subconscious, familiar means safe, even when what is familiar causes suffering. That is why a person can remain for years in a relationship that destroys them. That is why they may stay trapped in a job they hate. That is why they can sabotage their own dreams. Not because they are weak, not because they lack intelligence, but because their subconscious is trying to preserve a reality that matches its existing programming. Imagine a thermostat set to a specific temperature. If the room becomes too warm, the system activates cooling. If it becomes too cold, it turns on the heat. Many subconscious patterns function in the same way. A person may begin achieving success, but if their internal thermostat is set to a sense of inadequacy, they will unconsciously find a way to return to the familiar level. They may reject an opportunity. They may postpone important actions. They may make poor decisions. They may not even notice the opportunity standing right in front of them. All of this happens in order to remain consistent with the self-image stored deep within the mind. At this point, many people begin to understand why knowledge alone is often not enough. You can read hundreds of books. You can know every strategy for success. You can understand psychology and personal development. But if the subconscious program remains unchanged, life will continually return to old patterns. It is like trying to row a boat upstream against the force of a powerful river. Conscious willpower matters, yet the subconscious possesses tremendous momentum. The good news is that these programs can be changed. You are not condemned to the story written in childhood. You are not a prisoner of past experiences. You are not obligated to repeat the same patterns for the rest of your life. However, changing the subconscious requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires experience, repetition, emotional engagement. The mind learns primarily through emotion. That is why a single event can influence a person more deeply than 1,000 logical arguments. If a child is publicly humiliated, they may carry the belief for years that standing out is dangerous, not because someone logically convinced them of it, but because a powerful emotion became linked to a specific interpretation of reality. The same process works in the opposite direction. New experiences can create new pathways. Every act of courage weakens the program of fear. Every conscious action builds a new identity. Every step beyond an old limitation sends a new message to the subconscious. This is possible, I can do this, I can live differently. At first the change seems small, almost invisible. Yet just as a drop of water can wear away stone, daily choices gradually reshape the inner world. Many people make one critical mistake. They try to change their behavior without changing their identity. They attempt to act differently while still believing they are the same person. Yet lasting transformation begins when the answer to the question, "Who am I?" changes. If you see yourself as an insecure person, every courageous action will feel like a struggle. If you view yourself as a worthy person, certain behaviors become natural. Identity functions like the foundation of a building. Everything else is built upon it. That is why it is so important to understand that you are not merely the sum of your experiences. You are also the author of the meaning you assign to those experiences. You can write a new story. You can create a new image of yourself. You can teach your subconscious new patterns. But before that can happen, there is one more thing you must see. Most people spend their entire lives not in the present moment, but in automatic projections of the past and the future. Their minds constantly replay old stories or anticipate new threats. That is precisely why so many people are unable to experience peace, even when everything is relatively fine. The subconscious works in partnership with something else, the endless stream of thoughts that takes control of attention and separates a person from the only place where life truly exists. That place is the present moment. But is it possible to regain freedom from the never-ending noise of the mind and discover the space that existed within you before the first fear, the first wound, and the first limiting belief ever appeared? If this audiobook is bringing value to your life, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future inspiring content. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment and share your reflections. Tell us what touched you the most in this recording. You're also welcome to share your own experiences with fear and how it has shaped your journey. And if you'd like to support the growth of this channel, you can join our community of supporters here on YouTube. Thank you for being here, and now let's return to the next part of this journey. Most people spend their entire lives believing they are their thoughts. When a thought appears saying, "I'm not good enough," they believe it. When another thought whispers, "Something is wrong with you," they accept it as truth. When the mind says, "You are not ready," they obey without question. Very few people stop long enough to ask a simple yet life-changing question. If I can hear my thoughts, then who is listening? At first, the question seems ordinary. But hidden within it is a doorway to one of the deepest discoveries a human being can make. The mind is constantly active. It analyzes, compares, judges, predicts, remembers, worries, plans, replays conversations that already happened, and imagines conversations that may never happen. For many people, this inner noise becomes so familiar that they assume it is who they are. Yet there is a profound difference between having thoughts and being those thoughts. Imagine the sky. Clouds move through it every day. Some are bright and beautiful. Others are dark and stormy. Yet no matter how intense the weather becomes, the sky itself remains unchanged. Thoughts are like clouds. Awareness is the sky. The problem begins when we forget our true nature and start identifying with every cloud that passes by. Suddenly, every fearful thought feels real. Every doubt feels permanent. Every mental story feels like reality. We become trapped inside the narratives created by the mind. A man spent years struggling with anxiety. He tried books, courses, therapies, endless analysis. Yet the fear always returned. One afternoon, while sitting quietly in a park, something unusual happened. A familiar thought appeared. What if everything falls apart? Normally, he would follow it. analyze it, argue with it, fear it. This time he simply noticed it. For a brief moment he observed the thought without becoming the thought. In that moment, he experienced something he had never known before. Space. There was the thought, and there was the awareness observing it. The two were not the same. That simple realization changed more than years of overthinking ever had, not because all fear disappeared, but because he discovered that fear was not his identity. Every human being contains a place untouched by the storms of the mind, a place of stillness, presence, awareness. It is always there, waiting beneath the noise. The difficulty is that modern life rarely allows us to notice it. We are surrounded by distractions. Notifications compete for our attention. Screens demand our focus. Information flows endlessly. Silence has become unfamiliar. Yet silence is where we begin to remember ourselves. It is where we start seeing clearly. Imagine a lake. When the surface is disturbed by wind, the water becomes cloudy and distorted. It is impossible to see what lies beneath. When the water becomes still, everything changes. The depth becomes visible. The reflection becomes clear. The same thing happens inside us. A restless mind creates a distorted view of reality. A quiet mind reveals what has always been there. Many people fear silence more than they realize. They fill every empty moment with stimulation, music, television, social media, constant activity, constant movement, constant distraction. They call it productivity. They call it entertainment. Yet often it is simply avoidance, because when silence arrives, buried emotions begin to surface. Unanswered questions emerge. Hidden truths become visible. Silence removes the places where we usually hide. This is why stillness can feel uncomfortable at first, yet beyond that discomfort lies freedom. Every meaningful transformation begins with a pause, not with action, not with effort, not with struggle, with a pause, a moment of becoming fully present with what is. Most people have been taught to measure their worth by achievement, by productivity, by results. Rarely are they taught the value of presence, yet some of the most meaningful experiences in life cannot be achieved. They can only be experienced. Love cannot be forced. Peace cannot be chased. Joy cannot be manufactured through constant effort. These things arise naturally when we become present enough to receive them. Presence does not mean abandoning goals. It does not mean giving up ambition. It means no longer sacrificing your life in pursuit of the future. Many people spend years waiting for happiness. They believe it will arrive after the promotion, after the relationship, after the success, after the next milestone. Yet life keeps happening while they wait. The present moment is the only place where life truly exists. The past survives as memory. The future exists as imagination. Reality unfolds here, now, in this breath, in this moment. Fear depends heavily on the future. It needs imagined scenarios. It needs uncertainty. It needs stories about what might happen. Presence weakens its grip because presence returns us to what is actually happening, right now. Most of the things we fear never happen. Yet we suffer from them anyway, because we experience them repeatedly in our imagination. The mind becomes a projector, constantly displaying frightening possibilities. Awareness turns off the projector and returns us to reality. As presence deepens, something remarkable begins to happen. We start noticing that thoughts come and go. Emotions come and go. Sensations come and go. Experiences come and go. Yet something remains. Something constant, something aware, something silent. This awareness has been present through every stage of your life. It was there in childhood. It was there during heartbreak. It was there during success. It was there during failure. Everything else changed. Awareness remained. The discovery of this deeper dimension changes the relationship we have with life itself. We stop clinging so tightly to every thought. We stop treating every emotion as an emergency. We stop believing every story the mind tells us. Instead, we begin living from a deeper center, a quieter place, a stronger place, a freer place. And once you begin to recognize that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, and not the endless stories of the mind, a new question naturally emerges. If you are not the voice in your head, then who are you really? And could the answer to that question be the very source of the power you have been searching for all along? For most of life, a person builds an identity from experiences. They gather memories, achievements, failures, labels, roles, and opinions. Slowly, these pieces are assembled into a story. I am successful. I am shy. I am strong. I am unlucky. I am a survivor. I am not enough. Over time, these descriptions become so familiar that they feel permanent. Yet there is a question very few people ask. Who would you be without the story? Imagine an actor who spends decades playing the same role. Audiences recognize them as that character. They become famous because of it. Eventually, the role becomes so deeply associated with their identity that even they begin to forget the difference. One day, however, the costume comes off. The stage becomes empty. The lights go dark. The actor is left alone with a simple question. Who am I when the performance ends? Many people reach a similar moment in life. Sometimes it arrives after loss, sometimes after success, sometimes after heartbreak, sometimes during a period of deep reflection. Suddenly they realize that much of what they believed about themselves was only a role. They had mistaken experiences for identity. They had mistaken wounds for identity. They had mistaken achievements for identity. They had mistaken fear for identity. Yet identity built upon external circumstances is always fragile because circumstances change. Careers change, relationships change, bodies change. Roles change, opinions change. The person who defines themselves entirely through these things eventually finds themselves standing on unstable ground. There is, however, something deeper, something that existed before every label, before every success, before every failure. Before every fear, before every belief. It has been present throughout your entire life. It watched you as a child. It watched you during moments of joy. It watched you during moments of pain. It remained unchanged while everything else transformed. Most people spend their lives trying to become somebody. They chase a future version of themselves, a more successful version, a more confident version, a more respected version. Yet one of the greatest discoveries on the path of transformation is that true freedom often comes not from becoming someone else, but from remembering who you already are. A wise old man once said that he spent most of his life trying to earn something that had belonged to him from the beginning. Those words contain a profound truth. Human beings are born worthy. Worth is not something we achieve. It is not a reward. It is not something granted by society. It is not something earned through perfection. Yet countless people spend decades trying to prove they deserve what was never absent. They chase validation, approval, recognition, accomplishment, believing that one day they will finally feel enough. The tragedy is that no external achievement can permanently solve an internal belief. A person who feels unworthy will often carry that feeling into every success. They may accumulate wealth yet still feel empty. They may receive praise yet still feel inadequate. They may accomplish extraordinary things yet remain convinced they are falling short. This is because the problem was never external. It was rooted in identity. The moment you begin recognizing your inherent worth, something extraordinary changes. You stop acting from desperation. You stop creating from fear. You stop chasing approval as if your life depends on it. Instead, your actions begin arising from a place of wholeness. Imagine a tree growing in a forest. It does not compare itself to every other tree. It does not spend its days wondering whether it deserves sunlight. It does not seek permission to grow. It simply expresses its nature. Human beings possess the same potential, yet fear often disconnects them from it. Fear creates comparison. Fear creates self-doubt. Fear creates endless competition. Fear convinces people that they must become someone else before they can value themselves. The truth is far simpler. The more deeply you know yourself, the less you need external confirmation. This does not mean you become arrogant. Quite the opposite. Genuine self-knowledge often produces humility. You no longer need to prove your worth because you no longer doubt its existence. People who know themselves tend to become calmer. Their strength is quieter. Their confidence is less dependent on circumstances. They are not constantly defending an image. They are not constantly seeking validation. They are not constantly fighting themselves. This creates a new kind of freedom. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from approval addiction. Freedom from living according to other people's expectations. Freedom from the endless pressure to perform. Many people spend years asking, "What do others think of me?" Eventually, a more powerful question emerges. What do I think of myself? Then an even deeper question follows. Who am I beyond all thought? That question changes everything, because it points towards something beyond personality, beyond history, beyond identity. It points toward the essence of being itself. As this realization deepens, life begins to look different. The past no longer feels like a prison. It becomes a teacher. Mistakes become lessons. Wounds become sources of wisdom. Challenges become opportunities for growth. The person who once viewed life as a series of obstacles begins seeing it as a process of awakening. They realize that every experience carried a message. Every setback revealed something hidden. Every fear pointed toward an area needing attention. Every challenge invited expansion. Suddenly, life appears less random, not because everything happens for a predetermined reason, but because meaning can be discovered even within difficulty. This understanding creates resilience, not the brittle resilience of someone pretending to be strong. Real resilience, the kind that comes from knowing who you are beneath changing circumstances. Yet discovering your true nature is not the end of the journey. In many ways, it is only the beginning, because once you stop defining yourself through fear, limitation, and old stories, a new possibility appears. If you are greater than the beliefs that once controlled you, greater than the fears that once limited you, and greater than the identity you inherited, then what kind of life becomes possible from this moment forward? For most of their life, people believe that life is something that happens to them. Circumstances appear, opportunities arrive or disappear, relationships begin and end, success comes or does not come. They move through the years feeling more like passengers than creators. It is an understandable belief. There are many things beyond our control. We cannot stop time. We cannot rewrite the past. We cannot control the choices of other people. We cannot predict every event waiting around the next corner. Yet between total control and total helplessness lies a vast territory. It is within that territory that personal power is born. Most people surrender this territory without realizing it. They hand it over to old habits. They hand it over to fear. They hand it over to inherited beliefs. They hand it over to unconscious reactions. Then they conclude that they have no influence over their lives. The truth is more subtle. Influence does not begin with controlling the world. It begins with participating consciously in the creation of your experience. Imagine a gardener. The gardener cannot command the weather. They cannot force the sun to shine. They cannot order seeds to grow, yet they still possess tremendous influence. They prepare the soil. They remove weeds. They water consistently. They care for the environment where growth becomes possible. Over time, the garden reflects those choices. Human life operates in a similar way. Many people spend years trying to control the weather while neglecting the garden. They want guarantees before they begin. They want certainty before they commit. They want proof before they trust themselves. Life rarely works that way. More often, life reveals itself step by step. Every day presents countless opportunities for choice. Most of them seem insignificant, small decisions, small actions, small moments. Yet these moments quietly shape destiny. A person does not become courageous through a single dramatic act. Courage is built through hundreds of smaller moments. Moments when they speak honestly, moments when they set boundaries, moments when they choose growth over comfort, moments when they move forward despite uncertainty. The same is true of confidence. Many people believe confidence appears first and action follows. In reality, confidence is often the result of action. It grows through experience. Through repetition, through evidence gathered over time. Imagine learning to walk. No child waits until they feel completely confident before taking a step. They move first. They stumble. They learn. Confidence emerges from the process, yet many adults expect life to work differently. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until fear disappears. They wait until certainty arrives. Unfortunately, those conditions rarely exist. Readiness is often discovered in motion, not before it. A woman spent years wanting to transform her life. She read books, listened to podcasts, attended workshops. She knew exactly what she should do, yet nothing changed. One day she realized something important. Knowledge alone does not create transformation. Action creates transformation. That realization shifted everything. She began taking small steps. Nothing dramatic. A new habit here, a difficult conversation there, a boundary she had never set before, a decision she had postponed for years. Slowly, her life began changing. Not because of one breakthrough, because of consistent choices. This is one of the greatest secrets of personal growth. Life is shaped more by repetition than by intensity. Extraordinary outcomes are often the result of ordinary actions performed consistently. A river does not carve through stone because of a single powerful moment. It does so through persistence. Day after day, year after year, the same principle applies to the human mind. Every thought repeated regularly becomes stronger. Every belief reinforced repeatedly becomes more influential. Every action practiced consistently becomes part of identity. Many people underestimate the power of small choices because they focus only on immediate results. They do not see the invisible accumulation occurring beneath the surface. Yet every action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every decision strengthens a particular version of yourself. Every habit shapes the future. Once you understand this, you stop waiting for transformation to arrive from outside. You begin creating it from within. This does not mean life suddenly becomes easy. Challenges remain. Obstacles remain. Uncertainty remains. The difference is that you stop seeing yourself as powerless in the face of those things. You begin recognizing your ability to respond consciously. You begin recognizing your influence. Many people ask how to find their purpose. They imagine purpose as a destination waiting somewhere far away, a hidden treasure, a final answer. Often purpose reveals itself differently. It emerges through engagement, through participation, through exploration, through action. Life rarely reveals the entire map. More often it illuminates the next step, then the next, then the next. The path becomes visible while walking it, not before. This requires trust, not blind optimism, not denial. Trust in your ability to meet whatever comes. Trust in your capacity to grow. Trust in your resilience. Trust in your willingness to keep moving. As you begin living this way, a profound shift occurs. You stop reacting automatically to life. You begin responding intentionally. You stop recreating the past unconsciously. You begin creating the future consciously. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How do I want to respond?" That question contains immense power. It returns responsibility to where it belongs, not as a burden, as freedom. Because responsibility, at its deepest level, is simply the ability to respond, the ability to choose, the ability to create meaning, the ability to participate actively in your own life. And once a person begins living from this place, another question naturally emerges. A deeper question. A question that influences every decision, every dream, and every direction they take. If you truly have the power to shape your life through conscious choices, then what is the deeper purpose guiding those choices? What is the reason behind the journey itself? Because power without purpose can easily become another form of wandering, and that is where the next stage of the journey begins, in the search not merely for success, but for meaning. There are moments in every human life when the answers that once seemed sufficient no longer satisfy. Moments when achievements lose their shine. Moments when distractions stop working. Moments when a person finds themselves alone with a question deeper than all the others. What is this all for? Why the struggle? Why the effort? Why the dreams? Why the pain? Why this life? Such questions often appear during turning points, after loss, after failure, after success that somehow feels empty, after years spent chasing goals that promised fulfillment but delivered only temporary satisfaction. In those moments, the search for meaning begins, not as an intellectual exercise, not as a philosophical debate, as a necessity. Human beings can endure extraordinary hardship when they know why they are moving forward, yet without meaning, even comfort can feel unbearable. Many people spend years searching for meaning in external achievements. They believe they will discover it after reaching a certain income, status, relationship, or milestone. But meaning rarely arrives as a reward waiting at the finish line. More often, it emerges through the way we engage with life itself. Imagine two people performing the same task. One experiences boredom, frustration, and resentment. The other experiences purpose and fulfillment. The activity may be identical. The difference lies in meaning. Meaning transforms experience. It changes how we perceive effort. It changes how we interpret challenges. It changes how we understand suffering. A person who sees no purpose in a difficult journey quickly becomes exhausted. A person who sees significance in that same journey often discovers unexpected strength. This is one of the most remarkable aspects of human nature. Meaning creates energy. Meaning creates resilience. Meaning creates direction. Yet meaning cannot be borrowed. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be imposed from outside. Every person must discover it for themselves. Many people look for meaning in grand achievements. They imagine purpose must be extraordinary. They imagine it must involve changing the world. Sometimes it does. More often it appears in quieter forms: a parent raising a child with love, a teacher helping students grow, an artist expressing truth through creativity, a friend offering support during difficult times, a person living authentically despite fear. Meaning is not always found in dramatic accomplishments. It is often found in the quality of our presence, in the values we embody, in the way we show up for life. An elderly gardener was once asked why he continued planting trees despite knowing he would never enjoy the shade of many of them. He smiled and replied that not everything meaningful must benefit the person who begins it. There was wisdom in those words. Meaning often expands when we stop focusing exclusively on ourselves. Human beings are deeply connected creatures. We thrive when we contribute. We thrive when our lives serve something larger than personal comfort. This does not mean self-sacrifice. It means recognizing that fulfillment often grows through connection, through contribution, through purpose, beyond the ego. Many people discover that their greatest moments of joy occur not when they receive something, but when they give something. A kind word, a helping hand, a creative gift, their attention, their love, their courage. These moments remind us of something essential. We are not isolated individuals competing for survival. We are participants in a much larger story. Understanding this changes our relationship with suffering as well. Pain remains painful. Loss remains difficult. Grief remains real. Yet meaning can transform how we hold those experiences. Instead of asking only, "Why is this happening?" we begin asking, "What can this teach me?" Instead of viewing every challenge as punishment, we begin seeing challenges as opportunities for growth. Not because suffering is inherently good, but because human beings possess an extraordinary ability to create meaning from experience. Imagine looking at the backside of a tapestry. Threads appear tangled, random, chaotic. Nothing seems to make sense. Then you turn it around and suddenly a pattern appears. Life often feels similar. While living through difficult moments, we rarely see the entire picture. We see only fragments, we see only confusion. Yet years later, many people recognize how certain events shaped them, how heartbreak taught them compassion, how failure taught them resilience, how uncertainty taught them trust. Meaning does not erase pain. It transforms our relationship with it. This is why purpose is so powerful. It gives context to struggle. It provides direction during uncertainty. It offers a reason to continue when motivation fades. Because motivation comes and goes. Emotions rise and fall. Circumstances change. Meaning endures. It becomes an inner compass, a guiding force, a reminder of what truly matters. Eventually, a person begins to realize that life is not asking them merely to avoid suffering or pursue pleasure. Life is inviting them into something deeper: growth, contribution, presence, love, authenticity, the willingness to become fully alive. At this stage of the journey, fear loses much of its power, not because fear disappears, because something greater takes its place. Purpose becomes stronger than fear, meaning becomes stronger than doubt, direction becomes stronger than hesitation. A person who knows why they are walking can continue even when the road becomes difficult. Yet discovering meaning creates a new challenge. Many people understand these ideas intellectually. They agree with them. They believe them. Yet their lives remain unchanged. They know what matters, but they do not act on it. They understand the path, but they do not walk it. This reveals an important truth. Awareness alone is not enough. Insight alone is not enough. Understanding alone is not enough. At some point, every person reaches a moment when knowledge must become action, when reflection must become commitment, when potential must become reality. And that moment requires one thing above all else: the courage to stop preparing for life and finally begin living it. There is a trap that captures millions of people, and most never even realize they are inside it. It does not look dangerous. It does not feel dramatic. In fact, it often disguises itself as wisdom, responsibility, or common sense. The trap is called not yet. Not yet ready, not yet qualified, not yet confident enough, not yet experienced enough, not yet certain enough, not yet prepared enough. Many lives are quietly consumed by these two words. Dreams are postponed. Opportunities are delayed. Truth is silenced. Potential remains unrealized, not because people lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they keep waiting for a moment that never arrives. Imagine a ship standing in a harbor. It is safe there, protected, untouched by storms. Yet a ship was not built for the harbor. It was built for the sea. Human beings are the same. They were not born merely to prepare for life. They were born to live it. Fear, however, loves postponement. Fear understands that if it can keep you waiting, it can keep you trapped. It whispers, just a little longer. One more course, one more year, one more sign, one more guarantee. The promise sounds reasonable, yet years often disappear inside that promise. Life is filled with people waiting to feel ready before they begin, waiting to feel confident before they act, waiting to feel fearless before they move forward. Unfortunately, readiness is often a myth. Confidence is usually built through action, not before it. Courage is developed in movement, not in waiting. A woman dreamed of writing a book for years. She imagined it, planned it, studied it, researched it. Yet she never started. Every year she told herself she needed more preparation. One evening she asked herself a simple question: what if I never feel completely ready? The question changed everything. She realized she had been waiting for certainty, yet certainty was never coming. The next day she wrote a single page. It was imperfect. It was unfinished. It was enough. That page became a chapter. The chapter became a manuscript. The manuscript became a book. Transformation often begins with a single imperfect step, not with confidence, not with certainty, with movement. People frequently misunderstand courage. They imagine courageous individuals are somehow immune to fear. The reality is different. Courageous people feel fear. They experience doubt. They experience uncertainty. The difference is that they refuse to make fear the decision maker. They feel it and move anyway. Every time you act despite fear, something important happens. You collect evidence. Evidence that you can survive discomfort. Evidence that uncertainty will not destroy you. Evidence that growth is possible. Slowly, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is controlled by fear. You begin seeing yourself as someone who acts despite it. This shift changes everything. Most people spend years trying to eliminate fear before taking action. They are fighting the wrong battle. Fear is not the obstacle. Waiting is. Imagine a child learning to ride a bicycle. They fall. They wobble. They make mistakes, yet nobody expects perfection. Nobody tells them to wait until they are fully confident before trying again. They learn through experience. Adults often forget this principle. They expect mastery before beginning. They expect confidence before action. They expect certainty before commitment. These expectations create paralysis. Perfectionism becomes another form of fear. It appears noble. It appears responsible. Yet beneath the surface, it often serves a different purpose. It protects people from vulnerability. It protects people from failure. Most importantly, it protects people from action. Life does not reward perfect preparation. Life rewards participation. Consider a garden. You can analyze seeds forever. You can study them, measure them, compare them. Yet no flowers appear until the seeds are planted. At some point, action becomes necessary. The same is true of every meaningful dream, every relationship, every goal, every transformation. There comes a moment when thinking must end and living must begin. This is why uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the natural condition of growth. Every meaningful path contains risk. Love contains risk. Creativity contains risk. Authenticity contains risk. Freedom contains risk. Yet, avoiding risk carries its own cost. The cost of regret. The cost of unrealized potential. The cost of a life only partially lived. Many people fear failure. Few people realize that a far greater tragedy exists. Reaching the end of life and discovering how much was left unused, how many words remained unspoken, how many dreams remained unexplored, how much life remained unlived. There is a unique sadness in realizing that fear occupied a space that belonged to possibility. That realization has motivated countless people to change direction, to stop waiting, to stop asking for permission, to stop postponing their own lives. Every day offers a choice. Continue preparing forever or begin. Continue waiting for certainty or move forward with faith. Continue obeying fear or trust yourself enough to take the next step. The choice rarely feels dramatic in the moment, yet over time it shapes everything, because lives are not transformed through one extraordinary event. They are transformed through ordinary decisions repeated consistently, decision by decision, step by step, day by day. This is where true power begins, not when fear disappears, not when conditions become perfect, not when guarantees arrive. Power begins the moment you decide that fear will no longer determine the direction of your life. And once that decision is made, another realization begins to emerge. The strength you have been searching for was never hidden in money, status, recognition, or approval. It was hidden in your willingness to choose yourself, again and again, every day, in every circumstance. Yet one final question remains. What does life look like when fear is no longer in charge? What happens when a person truly begins living from their own center, trusting themselves, their purpose, and the path unfolding before them? The journey from fear to power does not end with a dramatic finale. There are no trumpets announcing your arrival, no perfect morning when all doubts vanish forever, no magical moment when fear disappears and life becomes permanently easy. Real transformation is quieter than that, deeper, more subtle and far more powerful. One day you wake up and notice that something has changed, not the world, you. The problems may still exist, challenges may still appear, uncertainty may still be present, yet your relationship with them is different. What once overwhelmed you now becomes manageable. What once controlled your emotions now passes through you like a wave. What once seemed like the end of everything now appears as one chapter in a much larger story. This is when you begin to understand what power truly is. Power is not control over circumstances. Power is not the ability to avoid difficulty. Power is not the absence of fear. Real power is the ability to remain connected to yourself regardless of what is happening around you. A person living in fear constantly reacts to life. Circumstances determine their emotional state. Other people determine their self-worth. Success determines their confidence. Failure determines their identity. Their inner world is controlled by external events. A person living in power experiences life differently. They still feel emotions. They still face challenges. They still encounter uncertainty. But they no longer hand over authority to every situation. They respond instead of react. They choose instead of obey. They create instead of merely survive. This changes everything. For years, many people believed they must become someone else in order to be enough. They chase improvement endlessly. More success, more approval, more achievement, more validation. Yet eventually they discover something unexpected. The greatest transformation is not becoming someone new. It is returning to who you were before fear convinced you that you were not enough. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. The masterpiece is already hidden within the stone. The sculptor does not create it from nothing. They remove what does not belong piece by piece, layer by layer, until what was always there becomes visible. Personal growth often works the same way. You are not building a new self. You are uncovering your true self. Every limiting belief removed, every fear understood, every mask released, every false story questioned. Each one reveals more of what was already there. As this process continues, something remarkable happens. You stop fighting yourself. For many people, life has been an endless internal battle, fighting emotions, fighting mistakes, fighting weaknesses, fighting the past, fighting fear, fighting uncertainty, fighting themselves. Eventually, they realize that peace does not come from winning the war. Peace comes from ending it. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean giving up ambition. It means no longer treating yourself as the enemy. It means understanding that every part of you developed for a reason. Every defense mechanism once served a purpose. Every fear was once an attempt to protect you. Every wound carried a lesson. This understanding creates compassion, not self-pity. Compassion, the ability to look at yourself honestly without cruelty, the ability to acknowledge imperfections without shame, the ability to continue growing without constant self-judgment. This is one of the most liberating experiences available to a human being, because many people spend decades believing they must earn the right to love themselves. They believe they must become perfect first, more successful, more disciplined, more accomplished. Yet self-acceptance is not the reward for transformation. It is often the foundation that makes transformation possible. The person who returns to themselves begins seeing life differently as well. They stop viewing every obstacle as an attack. They stop asking why difficult things happen to them. Instead, they become curious. What can this teach me? How can I grow through this? What is life showing me right now? These questions change the relationship with adversity. Challenges remain, but they become teachers rather than enemies. Setbacks remain, but they become opportunities rather than verdicts. Fear remains, but it no longer sits behind the wheel. Perhaps one of the most beautiful changes occurs in relationships. When people stop fighting themselves, they often stop fighting others. They become less defensive, less reactive, less dependent on approval. They discover a deeper capacity for understanding. They realize that most people are carrying invisible burdens. Most people are acting from fears they do not fully understand. Most people are searching for the same things beneath different appearances. Love, security, meaning, connection. This realization softens the heart, not because life becomes easier, because understanding becomes deeper. The person who has returned to themselves no longer needs to dominate, impress, or constantly prove their worth. Their strength becomes quieter, more grounded, more stable. Like a mountain that does not need to announce its height, like the ocean that does not need permission to be vast, like a tree that grows without comparing itself to the forest. There is a profound peace in living this way, not because life becomes predictable, because identity is no longer dependent on prediction, not because problems disappear, because self-worth no longer disappears when problems appear. This is freedom. Freedom from constant comparison, freedom from endless self-doubt, freedom from the exhausting need to become someone else. Yet perhaps the greatest realization of all is this. Happiness was never waiting in some distant future. Peace was never hidden behind the next achievement. Fulfillment was never reserved for a future version of yourself. Life has always been happening here, in this moment, in this breath, in this experience. The journey from fear to power ultimately leads to the same place: presence, authenticity, self-trust, the ability to stand fully in your own life, And now, having traveled through fear, identity, beliefs, emotions, shadow, awareness, purpose, action, and transformation, one final truth remains. This book was never really about becoming powerful. It was about remembering that the power was already there, waiting beneath the fear, waiting beneath the stories, waiting beneath the masks, waiting for the moment you would finally return to yourself. And now there is only one question left. Not who you are, not what you fear, not what limits you. The only question that remains is this. Now that you have reclaimed the steering wheel of your life, where will you choose to go from here? Perhaps you expected this journey to end here. Perhaps you imagined that the final page would provide a conclusion, a final answer, a neat ending to every question raised along the way. But the truth is that the most important part of this book was never contained within its chapters. The most important part has always been you. Every idea that resonated with you did so because it touched something you already knew. Deep truths rarely feel like new information. They feel like remembrance, like hearing a melody you have not heard in years yet somehow know by heart. Throughout life, people search for answers. They search in books, teachers, philosophies, religions, careers, relationships, achievements, and experiences. All of these things can offer guidance. All of them can point toward wisdom, yet none of them can replace the voice that already exists within. There comes a moment when every person must stop searching outside and begin listening inside. Not to fear, not to insecurity, not to the endless noise of conditioning, to something deeper, something quieter, something wiser. The part of you that has been present from the beginning. The part of you that recognizes truth before the mind has finished analyzing it. The part of you that knows the direction even when the road remains unclear. The part of you that never forgot who you truly are. If you look back over your life now, you may begin noticing something you could not see before. Perhaps many of the obstacles you once resented were actually guiding you. Perhaps some of the people who hurt you revealed places within yourself that needed healing. Perhaps certain failures redirected you toward a path more aligned with your truth. Perhaps life was never trying to punish you. Perhaps it was trying to awaken you. Human beings often imagine growth as an endless climb, a constant process of becoming more successful, more accomplished, more enlightened. Yet the deepest transformation often feels less like climbing and more like coming home to authenticity, coming home to presence, coming home to the truth of who you are beneath every fear, every role, every mask, and every expectation. There is something profoundly beautiful about the moment a person stops running from themselves. Many people spend years chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing success, chasing certainty, chasing the next achievement. They run so long that they forget why they started. Then one day they stop, truly stop, and in that stillness they discover something extraordinary. What they were searching for was never at the end of the road. It was within them all along. This realization changes everything, not because it removes every challenge, not because it guarantees a life without pain. It changes everything because from that moment forward, the search itself transforms. You stop looking for yourself in places where you could never be found. You begin building your life from the inside out, from your values, from your awareness, from your truth, from your presence. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson of all. Power is not a destination. It is not a title. It is not a status. It is not a final achievement waiting somewhere in the future. Power is a way of living, a way of choosing, a way of meeting life. It is the daily decision not to surrender your direction to fear. It is the daily decision to honor what is true rather than what is comfortable. It is the daily decision to remain yourself in a world constantly encouraging you to become someone else. Every day will offer a new opportunity to make that choice. Some days it will feel easy. Other days it will feel difficult. There will be moments of confidence and moments of doubt, moments of clarity and moments of uncertainty, moments when you feel strong and moments when you feel vulnerable. This is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you are human. The goal was never to eliminate fear forever. The goal was to stop allowing fear to lead. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now. Not a perfect version of yourself, not someone who solved every problem, simply a wiser version, a deeper version, a more authentic version. What advice would that future self give you today? Perhaps it would not be about success, perhaps it would not be about money. Perhaps it would simply say this: stop waiting for permission to be who you are. Because that is what so many people spend their lives doing, waiting for approval, waiting for certainty, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for someone else to tell them they are ready. Yet life does not need more people who are waiting. Life needs people who are willing to participate, people willing to create, to love, to grow, to contribute, to live consciously, to live courageously, to live authentically. When you see life from this perspective, every day becomes a beginning. It no longer matters how many times you failed. It no longer matters how long fear controlled your decisions. It no longer matters how lost you once felt. Every breath offers a new choice. Every moment offers a new direction. Every day offers a new beginning. Not tomorrow, not next year, now, right here. Perhaps that is why the deepest truth of this entire journey is also the simplest. You reclaim your power the moment you stop giving it away to what you fear. And perhaps now, as you reach the final words of this book, something far more important than an ending is taking place. A beginning. Not the beginning of another book. The beginning of a new relationship with your own life. A relationship built on awareness rather than conditioning, built on courage rather than avoidance, built on truth rather than fear. The journey from fear to power was never about becoming someone else. It was always about remembering who you have been all along, and everything you need to continue that journey is already within you. It always has been. It always will be. You have reached the end of this book, but not the end of your journey. Real change does not begin while you are listening. It begins the moment you return to your life and start acting differently than before. Remember that courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means choosing your own path despite fear. There is more strength within you than you realize. More possibilities than fear has allowed you to see. More power than you have ever imagined. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for certainty. Start now. Because the life you desire begins with a single decision, the decision to trust yourself. Thank you for sharing this journey. Now go and write the most beautiful chapter of your story.